Mimics are quite the dastardly trick. Even by From Software standards, a developer well known for hiding enemies around every other corner and beefing up bosses to hit even the most heavily armored players like a truck. The first one of these creatures in Dark Souls is even a result of some of the best ludo-narrative crafting and environmental design that From Software has ever made. Catching players off guard after hours of gameplay and half a dozen opportunities to find valuable items in similar chests, these imitative creatures feed into the paranoia of players, leading many of us to strike at every chest we see after Sen's Fortress, on the off chance that something sinister is lurking within. However, while these dangerous creatures seemingly only exist to catch players unawares and punish a lack of care, there is another side to this same coin. For defeating the Mimic, players are rewarded with powerful gear, and on lucky occasions, a key tool for collecting as many souls as possible. But exactly how powerful is that gear, and how far can hunting mimics really take players? Howdy, now I'm Prakuza, and welcome to DevBox. Today we're asking the question, can we beat Dark Souls while only equipped with mimic drops? Now to start, the answer is no. At least there's no way to actually kill all of the bosses with only equipment from mimics, since fighting the Four Kings requires wearing the Covenant of Artorias, which does not drop from a mimic. So, let's set some firm but eventually broken ground rules. 1. We are only allowed to equip gear we received from killing a mimic. 2. We can only get that gear by killing the mimic. No Lloyd's talismans. 3. If I enter an area with a mimic, then I must kill it before moving on. 4. I can only equip the most recent piece of gear that a mimic has dropped for me. 5. The only exceptions to the gear rule will be the Covenant of Artorias to fight the Four Kings, and the Charred Orange Ring to save me the trouble of hunting down enough humanity for the Izalith shortcut. 6. Finally, I can only kill bosses and enemies with the gear received from mimics. Alright, with the rules out of the way, let's talk about that B-roll that's been playing for the last few minutes while I've been talking. You may have noticed a peculiarity, that being me throwing a bunch of firebombs at the Asylum Demon. Looks like we're already breaking the final rule, huh? Well, wrap it up, gang, we're out of here. Asylum Demon had to be killed with firebombs, so we've already failed. Unless we get a little cheeky. Turns out, if you quit out fast enough while the Asylum Demon is dying, then it doesn't die all the way. But we also didn't get any rewards from it. Strange. Well, might as well make our way over to Oscar, and hey! Look at that. Ol' Oscar's got the key we need. So yeah, turns out that quit out had a few effects. First, it allows for me to leave the fight without registering the Asylum Demon as dead. Second, because I brought the Asylum Demon down to 0 HP, it triggers the flag that sends the key to exit the Asylum to Oscar. The result is that, in effect, I've made it past the Asylum Demon without killing it. Therefore, not breaking my rule to not kill any enemies with anything not received from a mimic. Now, was this really necessary to keep the challenge together in spirit? I don't know. Most of the time I consider runs having started when arriving at Lordran, but this is a fun chance to show off a neat exploit. Anyway, this then means we can walk right through the rest of the Asylum and make our way out towards Lordran proper and get this run truly underway. So, now that we're past the tutorial, it's time to get our first weapon. Only, there's a problem. The first mimic available isn't until Sen's Fortress, so that normally means having to get through both Gargoyles and Quelaag. Unless, yeah, we're doing Sen skip again. 2 weeks in a row, huh? Well, that's what I get for dedicating like a whole month of content to mimics. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, check out last week's video in the iCard, especially if you want to see me get eaten a bunch. Oh, and while I'm doing the YouTuber stuff, make sure to like and subscribe and junk. Alright, back to the skip. So we're grabbing up this hollow, and we'll ask him kindly to attack us while we stand right about here. Then a quick parry, riposte with our fist, and boom, we're in deathcam mode. Now, I don't know if I've really gone over what's happening here. But there is a death plane right outside of these stairs, and performing the riposte pushes us far enough into it to activate the death cam mode that normally activates after falling through one of these death planes, but not far enough to actually have us die. The result is that we're now moving around in an incomplete state, where the game no longer bothers to load anything that isn't already loaded in, and movement turns into a strange type of tank controls. This all means we can run towards Sen's Fortress, and the giant gate normally blocking access won't be loaded in, and neither will its physics. So we can walk right through, quit out, then load back in, safely behind the gate. Alright, with that finished, we can carefully make our way through the fortress. And carefully is the operative word here, since dying will put us back behind the gate, and we'll have to perform the skip again to get back in. So we've got to make sure to get to the Mimic as safely as we can. Of course, reaching the Mimic is only half of the equation. The other half is how to actually kill it. We don't have a weapon after all, and the rules state that I can't use a Lloyd's Talisman to easily get the item hiding inside. Instead, however, we can use the environment to our advantage. You know, as long as the environment doesn't try to kill me before it kills the Mimic. Or worse yet, that. Worse yet, that. Okay, well, I guess I've got to do the skip again if I want to pick up the item. No problem, right? Well, yes. But also no. Mostly no. In fact, only no. Turns out, unique monster drops, like the ones from Mimics, don't remain after dying in DS1. So it's time to throw myself into the void and accept my fate. We're running it again! Pick a new name that fits the vibe of this challenge, quit out on the Asylum Demon again, head into Lordran again, head through the Valley of Drakes again, skip into the fort again, lead the Mimic to its demise, and try not to die again! Okay, second time is apparently the charm. And with all of that done, what did it net us? A lightning spear. That is actually one of the best weapon drops in the game. Like, no joke, this weapon could easily get us through to the endgame. Hence rules 3 and 4, because otherwise this whole challenge would be far too easy. Still, for now, we can leave Sen's Fortress and start burning through bosses. And when I say burning, I mean absolutely slaughtering these bastards. To note, this thing is only at +2 at this point. After grabbing the Titanite chunks from the Black Knights in Undead Burg and Parish, I debated hitting +5 already, but didn't want to bother with hunting down all of the materials right away. Although, I will be getting it there by the time we're actually ready to take on Sen's Fortress for real. For now though, I've still got a few names to check off the list. And we're going to actually be kinda thorough here, because I don't want to be stuck running through the remaining bosses with anything other than our thundering friend here. In that case, we're going to rapid fire a few bosses, because they are going to be very simple to take down with a high-powered weapon like this. So there's really not much to write home about. Or to YouTube, or whatever. Anyway, what was I talking about again? Oh yeah, bosses. We've got the Gaping Dragon in the depths, who goes down without much issue, although I seem to be struggling to find the position for the tail cut. Then there's the Moonlight Butterfly, who likes to take its sweet time to come within melee range, but we get it in 2 cycles. And finally is Ceaseless Discharge, who never even touches me as I get the easy kill. Wait, I think I might have skipped something there. Oh, right! Quelaag. Yeah, the Spider Lady is usually an early roadblock for plenty of builds, what with her massive health bar and arena control. However, a few upgrades on the Lightning Spear, and we can easily break through that wall. Who would have guessed that the equivalent of a +12 weapon would trivialize early bosses? Certainly not me. So difficult as Quelaag might normally be, this is certainly not the most difficult she's ever been. And with her finished, we can ring the bell and go do the Ceaseless Discharge that we already talked about. Having the second bell rung also means that we can finally head into Sen's Fortress without the skip. But there are still a few more bosses I want to take care of before moving forward. This includes both demons and the Undead Asylum, since both are still alive. For the first of these twin bosses, I'm not exactly sure if the floor will actually fall while I'm fighting it, since this is technically the version of the Asylum where it should. So to be safe, I make sure to stay away from where that would normally happen, and get a quick kill. If this level of weapon is already overpowered against Quelaag, the Asylum Demon clearly doesn't stand a chance. The same absolutely goes for the Stray Demon, who dies long before giving me anything close to a challenge. I think I took more damage from the fall into the arena than the boss was capable of giving me the entire fight. Not that either of these demons are ever very difficult, but it is still pretty crazy to notice exactly how overpowered the Lightning Spear is at this point. Well, with all of the early game bosses finished, it's time to head to Sen's Fortress so we can get into the mid-game and start fighting some bosses that can actually stand up to this Lightning Spear. So we head in, kill the Firebomb Giant and the one that opened the gate for us in the first place for some Titanite chunks, and finish leveling the Lightning Spear all the way up to +5. This is the max level for this type of weapon, which would honestly be a waste to only use on one boss and then immediately replace. In that case, let's take this down somewhere a little darker. I'm gonna go stab a puppy! I'm sorry, what did you think I meant when I said darker? Heading down into the catacombs? Hell no. Not without the Lord Vessel at least. No, we're here to kill Sif, who, I have it on good authority, is very much a puppy. Because, as my girlfriend has claimed, quote unquote, all dogs are puppies. 2 days old? Puppy. 2 years old? Big puppy. 2 decades old? Old puppy. All dogs are puppies. Sif herself isn't too difficult, although the spear is a bit of an issue against the pupper. The weapon itself doesn't exactly have a large enough presence to constantly smack her in the legs, and doesn't have enough verticality to really reach her main body. In fact, the spear itself actually has a lot less range than you might expect in general. Still, running attacks offer a rising strike that can hit the body consistently, and occasionally free aiming lets me hit her in the legs if I'm careful. So, while she's a bit of a nuisance, Sif is far from being a roadblock. And with her done, we now have access to the Covenant of Artorias. Oh yeah, we haven't gone dark enough yet. See, there's an unfortunate quirk of the way I had set up the rules ahead of time, and I knew at this point what I was condemning myself to. My damage output is about to drop wildly, and that means I need to pass the DPS check while I still have the highest DPS I'll have throughout this run. So I head down into New Londo, kill Ingward, and drop into the Abyss to fight the 4 Kings. On my first attempt, I'm mostly here to give it a sanity check, to see if I'm actually strong enough to win, especially without enough armor to poise my way through the fight. You know, because mimics don't drop any armor sets, only a single piece, and I haven't found that yet. It doesn't exactly go super well as I'm greeding too hard and get some pretty awful RNG that stops me from keeping the DPS consistently high, to the point that the second king spawns before I'm able to kill the first, a compounding issue that will only make the fight worse as it goes on. If I survive that long, which I don't. However, recognizing my own lack of patience, I head back in, get some good RNG, and keep the pressure on while still managing my stamina well enough to dodge every attack that comes my way. This time, I'm able to kill the first king before the second arrives. It's a hard barely on that one, but a win is a win. And 4 kings later, I get that win. Alright, well that's the toughest it's going to get with the Lightning Spear. So let's go for a quick victory lap against the Iron Golem. Couldn't even give me that, could you? Thank you, Dark Souls. Second try gonna be the charm again? Yeah, there we go. That's more like it. And now it is finally time for Enter Londo. Technically, I could have come here right from the beginning after having gotten the Lightning Spear from performing Senskip, Now, while that would have been nice because it would mean being able to warp from the very beginning, there are some issues with bringing this run into Anor Londo. First is getting an even stronger weapon. Yeah, it turns out our next Mimic is almost immediately after the first one, at least in the normal order of progression, and it rewards us with the Crystal Halberd, a massive upgrade from the Lightning Spear, with a combination of an already high damage bonus and the ability to actually scale with stats. This is an upgrade in every way, not even needing to be reinforced to outdamage Lightning Spear. I mean, look at how quickly it slaughters the gargoyles. So, with how powerful the Crystal Halberd is, why didn't I simply beat Iron Golem right away and hurry towards this Mimic? Well, let's finish up Anor Londo and go take on Ornstein and Smo to explain exactly what is wrong with the Crystal Halberd. Now, as you'll see, while the damage presented to the Crystal Halberd should be better than the Lightning Spear, it does garbage damage here. Also, it got all gnarled and shrunk on the way here. It's also suddenly being called an Occult Club, and this is a different weapon. Wait, what happened between cuts? Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, it turns out the real problem with the Crystal Halberd isn't the fact that it can't be repaired, or that I'm out of Titanite chunks. Nope. Turns out it's the fact that to finish Anor Londo, we have to replace the Crystal Halberd with the Occult Club found at the Mimic after the Archers. And this weapon is not my favorite. I'll be diplomatic and avoid calling it straight up not good, but I can say for sure that I'm not a fan. Occult gear primarily scales on faith stats, which I haven't really been able to dump too many points into, and doesn't even have the benefit of permanently killing undead skeletons. So for a faith-heavy build like a paladin or a miracle build, looking to supplement their spellcasting with a high faith weapon, this club can ideally be great, but as our primary source of damage without having the proper stats to get most of it, well, you can see that abysmal damage on ONS. It's not great in this context. Still, patience eventually wins out, and using the pillars to separate the two bosses lets me get in a few hits at a time. It's a long process, but eventually Ornstein goes down, and all that remains is Super Smo. With only one of the duo still around in careful positioning to keep Smo from snowplowing me, we make do with the low damage and take him down one hit at a time. This long, drawn-out method is going to be a key from here on out, because the damage isn't going to be getting much better from here. Now's also a great time to mention that there were two more Mimics on the way to ONS, but neither had gear, and I killed them both without much issue either, both with the Occult Club. For now though, I take a bit of a topsy-turvy direction, and I would certainly say that some of the difficulties to come are a direct result of wavering on how to push the build forward. All the same, I get the Lord Vessel from the Booby Lady, placed it on Gwyn's altar, and started to make my way into the catacombs. To explain the thought process here, I figured that it would be a good idea to make my way into the Tomb of the Giants, so I could farm the Bone Towers for White Titanite chunks, to level up my club. However, on my way down, and after killing Pinwheel, I realized that this probably isn't the best course of action. Because even if I managed to get a +5 Occult Club now and start pumping into Faith, it would only really get me as far as Nito, and maybe through Lost Isolate, if I decided to take that route next. Then, no matter what, there's still one more weapon that I'll have to finish the game with, and the keys to the DLC will require me to get it before getting in there too. So after grabbing the Tomb of the Giants warping bonfire, I head back to Anor Londo and decide it's time to take on the Duke's Archives. Although, with the low damage on this club, I need to be a bit creative about how I get through here. Weird, I've never not gotten the head from these guys. Probably because I skipped the Undead Parish one earlier, since the drop is guaranteed on the last one. Want to know what else is guaranteed? dying to impatience, especially when there's like 50 enemies all chasing me. I make the run eventually, but at this point, I'm starting to lose patience with how weak this weapon is. I mean, look how many parries it takes to kill the Crystal Knight. And don't even get me started on Seath here. I can't even reach him. And we're in prison? Can this day get any worse? Alright, prison break goes fine, as does the descent to the bonfire. However, now that we're here, there are a few items to check off the list before I can move forward. Number 1 is back in the first section where we went up and got killed by Seath. It's another Mimic! This one is in a bit of an awkward position, and I used a quit out to fight it one-on-one. So this might be a little hard to watch since I had to keep our little tussle contained to this corner of the room, if I didn't want to call the other mobs my way. However, once it's done, we get our first shield of the run! The Crystal Knight Shield. You know, this would pair well with the Crystal Halberd, but unfortunately, my rules simply don't allow it. Even if I skipped into the Duke's Archives early, I wouldn't be able to leave Anorlando without picking up the Occult Club. Inversely, even if I stretched that rule, I'd have to also go for my second target of the Archives. That's right, we've got another Mimic. The last Mimic, in fact, which means that this is going to be a bit of a special drop here. Once I kill it, I mean, a task that has honestly become incredibly simple once you start figuring out their patterns. It's a little late to drop this advice now, but basically every attack from a Mimic can be easily strafed. Not rolled, strafed. And you can immediately punish right after. They also have low enough poise that even the Occult Club can get a solid stagger after only a few hits. I mean, it is a blunt weapon, so staggering is kind of its claim to fame, but still. Now that the final Mimic is down, we're offered 2 prizes. One being the Enchanted Falchion, and the second being the Symbol of Avarice. You might not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like to those dedicated to the art of mimicry. Actually, even I don't like this, because goodness is this not peak. Not only am I now mid-rolling, but the Enchanted Falchion has basically the same problem as the Occult Club, only without the benefit of dealing blunt damage for that extra stagger potential. Well, let's go kill Seath with this heavily magic-based weapon. I mean, I'd make a joke about this actually being difficult, but the clams that make their way into the arena offer me way more trouble than the boss himself. Don't get me wrong, this is a long process, but not exactly difficult. After some effort, he goes down. From here, let's head down and finish off the Tomb of the Giants, which kinda extra sucks here. Like, I know the way I need to go, but boy is it tough to learn the path with no visibility. Also, Nito himself is a bit of a bastard, which means I have to do this run up quite a few times. Too many times, in fact. There are a couple factors making Nito tough here. Not having a way to kill off his little minions? Check. Losing a massive chunk of health from simply jumping into the arena? Check. Dealing more DPS to myself with the Symbol of Avarice than the Enchanted Falchion can deal to Nito? Checkity fucking check. I'd say that this is the most retries I need for one of the Lord Souls, but I think it might be tied for what comes next. For now though, we take the long path to killing Nito, slicing at his ankles for about a month straight, non-stop, no food or bathroom breaks, totally raw-dogging this fight. And in the end, Nito goes down like the rest. And then there was one, but some bumps in the road on the way there. Alright, heading into the Demon Ruins in Lost Izalith, a quick trip since Ceaseless Discharge is already dead. That means next up is the Demon Fire Sage. It's basically a rinse and repeat of the Stray Demon and Asylum Demon before him. Not really a challenge at this point, even with a low damage weapon. Moving on. On to the Centipede Demon. This one's a bit of a weird fight, but not difficult. It does throw me for a few loops though. Like when it tries to grab me, and I get sent out into the ether. I mean, I know there's an exploit to get the boss to fall through the world, but I didn't know he could turn the tables on us like that. And I've never even done that glitch. So what the fuck, guy? Where's your beef with me? Oh, right, the part where I've killed you over 100 times. I don't think that's an exaggeration, by the way. Between the Prepare to Die edition and remaster on PS4 and Switch, I've probably beaten this game at least that many times. And yet I'm still bad enough at it that I still can't stop this from happening. Oh yeah, a lot has been happening while I've been yapping. Killed Kirk and the Witch of Izalith, although their tag team duo did almost catch me off guard. And now I get to do the worst fight in the game. But I don't care to harp on it too much. In fact, I don't even want to be here long enough to go on about it. So let's show the time I finally succeed and get this over with. And I don't even get to really celebrate that. Whatever. The deed is done. Moving on. We've got a couple more bosses to hit before we finish the base DS1 experience, starting with Gwendolyn. Now, while I'd allowed myself to use rings in order to fight some bosses before, that was because there was no other way. In the case of Gwendolyn, it turns out there are actually two other options. I can either kill Guinevere, which is impossible with my current build, or I can take a jump at this statue here and get a quick quit out. Turns out, the rising animation from loading back in can kill this wall, one of many uses for well-positioned quit outs it would appear. With that obstacle overcome, Gwendolyn doesn't fare much better. Dodge the big magic, sidestep the arrows, and hide away from the scatter shot. Even the enchanted falchion beats them down quickly. Our final base boss to check off now is Priscilla. I'm sure she'll be nice as long as we're respectful of her painting. Wait, don't lick that. Why are you like this? Whatever. Kill the zombie dragon, jump attack its legs, and we are through to Priscilla. She kills me once as I struggle to find her invisible self. However, on a second attempt, I read the footprints well, strike true, and by the time she is once again visible, it's over. The crossbreed princess falls once more. Well, with the base game finished, what's left to move on to? Are we going to kill Gwyn? No, as much as I would love to. That is simply not how this works anymore. Not when the DLC has 4 of the toughest bosses around, all waiting to kick my teeth in while I cry like a little... Yeah, that would be awesome. So, as some of you may have already noticed, the DLC is where I start needing to bend some rules. Why? Well, after fighting Sanctuary Guardian for like an hour and a half, he broke my shield, which had been helping out a lot in the fight, but is the source of my overweighing problem. While I could have gone and found a chunk to upgrade it with, I decided that since the shield is broken, I'll take that as a roleplay excuse, reason to drop the shield and go in two-handing the enchanted falchion. And wouldn't you believe it, on the very first attempt where I had my light rolls back, I fucking won. That's the power of only learning one playstyle. Spoiler alert, the shield will remain off for the rest of the DLC, and that won't be the only rule that I bend. Why, you might ask? Well, because next up is Artorias. Yeah, even with my faster rolls, this still takes over an hour of attempts to get down. However, unlike the left-handed run, I don't run into the same lack of DPS with the falchion. Turns out these weapons are useful in the right hand, since now I've actually got the damage to slap Artorias out of his buffing animation. There are some variables to watch out for here though, like making sure not to give him too much space and to be careful about my stamina. All of that being said, this isn't exactly free or easy. The low damage draws this fight out to the point that I can't afford to trade any blows, no matter how much Estus I take in with me. It's a slow process, baiting out his jump attacks and lunge, but after some time and about a 7-minute single run, we get through it. Interestingly, beating Artorias also opens up 2 more mimics. Although, they unfortunately don't have any weapons, armor, or other types of gear to equip ourselves with. Instead, we get a wood carving and a key. The key is definitely the more important of the two, as it opens the way for Go, who in turn allows us to challenge Calamite. Did you know that if you mess up and tell him no, you have to go all the way back down to Calamite's arena to get him to give the prompt again? Because I didn't. Until now. So, Calamite. I'm not going to split hairs here. He's a difficult fight, and could definitely end me quickly if any of his hits managed to catch me. But at the same time, I get this fight on my first try. It's honestly quite the surprise, considering that this boss has kicked my ass hard in the past. I think it might have been partially because of the hours I spent on Artorias and the Sanctuary Guardian, the power of patience had finally set in, and even my terrible damage couldn't beat my stride. Of course, this isn't expected to be the biggest struggle of the run. That's coming next, as I dive deeper into the dark. At the bottom of the abyss walks a waking nightmare. The Handman himself, Manus, father of the abyss. There was a time when I'd considered Artorias the toughest fight in DS1, to a degree because he is still my favorite fight in the game, and it helps my tender little ego to consider the one I like best to be the toughest. However, at this point, I definitely give that to Manus. And I really don't like Manus. And I probably don't like Manus because he's really, really hard. Like, it's exactly that simple. Beating this guy is a struggle, and I don't like it. And I can confirm that this is exactly what I don't like about this. Because I have 4 hours of evidence to fall back on. This took forever. Too long, in fact. I need a break. Let's take a second to go make breakfast. And yes, I've been playing so long that putting the game down for a second right now is making room for breakfast at this point. I don't have a very good sleeping schedule. To start, let's slap some steak in a fryer and get to prepping. We've got onions, chopped, garlic, also chopped, even tortilla shells, once again chopped. Corn shells, by the way, flour comes out a bit gummy when you cook it this way. And finally, crack some eggs, to really make sure that this is actually breakfast. Pull off that steak long before it is actually finished. That shit is raw in the center, but that's the plan. Then drop in the onions, let them cook until they start to turn translucent, and follow up with the tortilla shells. Once these get a little bit of color on them, honestly, you could go for darker than I do here. Drop in the garlic and let it bloom. That's a fancy word for let the abrasive scent mellow out. And then we can drop in the eggs. Finish chopping up the steak and throw it into the pan. Mix it all up and you've got my personal favorite version of scrambled eggs. Some tasty stuff. Oh, and I like to put sriracha on mine. Alright, that was a nice break. Some delicious breakfast and now we can go fight Manus again. Let's get back in there with some experimentation. Partially because I'm curious, and partially because I'm sick of fighting this dude. So, of the 4 mimic weapons, which one seems to be doing the best? Well, the lightning spear is doing a little better, but is really showing how unscaled damage upgrades fall off quickly. It's the same reason that the Drake sword often gets called the noob trap. Then there's the +0 Occult Club, which wouldn't even be worth upgrading at this point. Mostly because, even though it scales, I don't have the stats to make it useful. We've already seen what the enchanted falchion can do. It isn't much. In that case, I guess that leaves us with the crystal halberd. This is easily the strongest weapon in my arsenal right now, but it's heavy enough to put me in mid-roll speed while wearing the symbol of avarice. It should also be noted that the crystal halberd is dealing this damage without ever being upgraded. So I'm going to go ahead and fudge the rules a bit again, because I'm sick of fighting this dude. I'm going to take off the mimic head, reinforce the crystal halberd, and take Manus down once and for all. +5 crystal halberd in hand and half a dozen hours of struggle behind me, I do exactly that, beating the bastard down on my first go. Somewhat of an underwhelming win, I have to say, having to bend the rules so hard to get it done. In that case, let's finish this. Back to the crystal shield, back to the symbol of avarice, back to the enchanted falchion. Parry spam until Gwyn goes down, and I walk on into the dark. Did it work? Did I beat the game with only equipment from mimic chests? Yes. Did I triumph over every obstacle in my way according to my own rules? No. But I guess I'll take it. An asterisk is still a win, it would seem. See you soon. Hey, it's that time again. The end of the video where I invite folks to come check out the Patreon. Link in the description. And make good on the rewards for those currently pledged. Patreon members get early access to videos and their names written in the end credits. And those who pledge $5 or more get their names read out, like Azul. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.